In this installment, talking shop with Sonja and Tabitha while sifting through the 2007 fall premieres in my classic collection, including a little gem called Reaper. I'm up to season 6 in Supernatural and the premiere of Feud, Betty and Joan in my current collection, and oh wow, the things I've been watching. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on video, Fuzzy you.
I'm always torn whether to start with my Friday night feature or what I've been watching, since when sifting a basket of media memories, you want to lead with something good. I suspect my classic collection report might get a little bit inside baseball, so I'll start with the news and go from there.
What I've been watching.
First off, there's no more water streaming down the cabinetry in my kitchen, so that's something. The home repairs are slated for mid-August. In the meantime, Ralph and I have taken advantage of the generally decent weather we've been enjoying here to take in a couple of shows. We caught the Capitol Shakespeare production of As You Like It a couple weeks ago, and the Sleepy Hollow Theater Arts Program production of Hairspray last weekend. I hadn't seen As You Like It before, but it was your standard issue Shakespeare comedy. If you list the elements of a Shakespeare comedy as a checklist, family squabbles, madcap fools, mistaken identity, and cross-dressing, all were present and accounted for. Watching the wrestling at the beginning was pretty cool because they masked Orlando as an actual luchador. The rest of it was entertaining as cast members assumed double roles throughout the course of the show and presented a workmanlike comedy, and it was building to what would doubtless have been a satisfying climax when the storm sirens started going off. There wasn't much indication that anything was meteorologically amiss. In fact, the first acknowledgement of the disruption was from the stage, with the fool busting down the fourth wall by bellowing at the sirens to "Shut up already, you stupid sirens!" They'd gotten as far as recreating the lioness attack in the woods, so we were definitely in the home stretch on this thing. But the sirens were making it impossible to hear much of anything anymore, so we were all gamely departed the production, which in any event was free, so we weren't out much and went our separate ways. Then last weekend we got over to John Waters' hilariously dishy civil rights treatise Hairspray, led by chunky hair hopper Tracy Turnblad. It's going to be a challenge to cast this show up here in outer Scandahuvia, but everybody did a great job, especially standout performers Seaweed and Little Inez. Motormouth Maybelle might have wondered if she was even in this show. She made an onstage appearance early on, but we never heard from her until, and I mean late, in the first act. Checkerboard chick Penny Pingleton and her nutty mother were awesome as well. I've seen both movies and enjoyed the NBC Live version, but this is the first time I've ever seen the show live on stage, and they rocked it. Baltimore takes its usual kinky licks through Waters' loving lens, but the focus remains on starstruck Tracy and her path to the Corny Collins show, integrated swimming pools, and a kiss from board member Link. Sleepy Hollow maintained the traditional casting for her mother, Edna Turnblad. The Von Tussles were delightfully wicked. The soulfully moving I Know Where I've Been was very good, and it all built to a towering message of you can't stop the beat. As far as media and what I've been watching recently, TNT's presentation of Will has been okay. It's insanely speculative, certainly written for a modern audience. Every aspect of Kit Marlowe's life is a living scandal, and wow, just to mention it, but the power of black people to talk back to whites and lay hands on them near the dawn of the transatlantic slave trade seems unlikely. I do not think the power of the church has been overstated, just maybe Queen Elizabeth I's apparent hatred of the Catholicism, or more to the point, the zeal by which practitioners are persecuted by her functionaries. The thing is, Shakespeare became Shakespeare over time. I mean, he had to have done this. This show presents him as a paid writer on his second day in London, tarting himself up with golden baubles while he protests to anyone he can make listen that he's got a wife and children in the shires to support. Well, Everyone except his mistress and muse, Burbage's daughter, with whom he pre-creates the balcony scene. Fun, dramatic, exciting, erotic, wild, and mysterious. Do not watch this for historical accuracy, but as entertainment goes, it's generally worth it. I can also still recommend Preacher. The first season episodes I've seen since my last podcast have continued the strong storytelling I've been enjoying in this show. So often I can be watching this show and totally see the frame they drew from the graphic novel. That is to say, I've never read the comic book, but some of the choices in photography and camera angles seem definitely to have been inspired from graphic novels. I've gotten to the point where he's growing his congregation by leaps and bounds, fighting to keep his powers of persuasion as having been bestowed by the will of God despite his confrontation with a couple of angels. It's wild stuff. Finally, I also caught a movie on Sci-Fi called Odd Thomas, wherein a somehow psychic man is visited by the restless dead in order that he might avenge their deaths. The world crafted by the film seems parallel to the one crafted by Brian Fuller in Dead Like Me, in which mischievous dark spirits congregate for a feast of carnage when something really bad is going to happen, and some of the photography seemed to be inspired by R.I.P.D. This was not an easy movie to follow, but I did find it to be enjoyable. Before I get into my classic collection here, I'll dive into my Friday night feature.
Friday Night Feature.
The classic collection discs I was working on mainly took me through the 2007 fall premieres, and nothing really stood out in terms of zooming in on any particular show, but I did encounter a series premiere I thought was worth revisiting. In the fall of 2007, the CW premiered a show called Reaper, which featured Brett Harrison as Sam Oliver, a slacker employee at the Workbench, a big-box home improvement store. It's his 21st birthday, and his parents' contract with Satan has just kicked in. Satan, played by Ray Wise with exactly the perfect amount of smarm, informed Sam that he will be a Reaper. More of a bounty hunter, really. His job is to track down souls who have escaped from hell, box them up in specifically crafted vessels, and return them. There are some problems. Sam isn't especially skilled at this. He doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't want to, and oh yeah, the souls don't want to return. Fortunately, he's got some help. His best friend and coworker, Bert Sock Wysocki, played beautifully by the scruffy Tyler Labine, helps him keep perspective, and also whips up some killer bounty hunter gear. Also, his ex works in the Justice Department in some capacity, so they get some help there linking Sam's targets to past crimes. As for his reluctance, the devil has a decent mix of carrot and stick to keep Sam motivated. He says he'll keep up his end of the deal with Sam's parents. Also, if Sam fails to collect the souls, the devil will kill him in probably horrific ways. The rather graphic example he gave was run him over with a Zamboni. So Sam is hooked. Outfitted in fireproof reaping gear, Sam and Sock charge up the vessel that Sam was given to nab the soul he was assigned to collect, an arsonist, hiding out, ironically enough, as this seriously jacked firefighter whose body doubles as a flamethrower. Along with the vessel, a dirt devil dustbuster, Sam's got some telekinetic powers to draw on as well, which saves Sock's bacon from frying up when the arsonist gets him in range. Other fun elements from the pilot include Sam's restive relationship with his little brother, Kyle, and his budding relationship with coworker Andy, whose life Sam saved when the devil arranged for an air conditioner to almost fall on top of her. An element that never really went anywhere was that dogs were somehow drawn to Sam. The only fun things that happened with that was when they were chasing Sam and Sock went after them with a leaf blower, which amazing how he was ready with that. And when Sam fed them some of the spiral cut ham he won for winning the sales contests at the Workbench, which the devil helped him win as a reward for capturing the arsonist. Sam is keeping his new mission a secret from his parents, which would be easier if he'd simply move out, so they don't feel guilty about selling his soul to the devil, although really you'd think that ship had sailed, circumnavigated, and returned to port by now. And I don't think he came clean with Andy about all the new weirdness in his life, so he does have some secrets to keep. I remembered loving this show. I was watching way too much television at the time for my column, and I still begrudged the CW for having cancelled Angel 2 years before. But Reaper was a keeper. It ran for 31 episodes, closing in May of 2009. Bret Harrison went on to a recurring role in the shrill conservative dystopian remake of V, and leading role in the unfortunate Christian Slater vehicle Breaking In, where, don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but from the moment he appears on any set, you are never too far away from Christian Slater overload, and that includes his voice work in Archer. And Tyler Labine appeared in many shows before and since that I never saw. He had a recurring role on Boston Legal in 2006 that I'm looking forward to revisiting when I hit that set of recordings. He had a lead role in the short-lived Sons of Tucson that showcased his slacker man-child qualities. He's showing up in something this year called Big Bear, where a guy has broken the engagement off with his fiancée, but reluctantly decides to have his bachelor party anyway. Should be a good time.
Diving into the classic collection.
Turning to my classic collection, I encountered a problem at Disc 284 that I've sort of been dreading since I started this project. Closer to the beginning of time, when I began transferring my VHS tapes to discs, my recorder finalized the discs automatically. This was important because once a disc is finalized, it can run in any player. If it has not been properly finalized, it can only run in the style of player it was recorded in. Well, I've worn out 3 VHS to DVD dubbers in the course of this project. In every one of them, the DVD recorder still worked. It was the VHS half of the equation that wore out. Most of my dubbers recorded DVD plus R media, including the Toshiba I'm using right now to record shows from my DVR box directly to disc. I call that one Tabitha. My current dubber, a Sanyo I call Sonja, records to DVD minus R media. When I loaded disc 284 into Sonja, she did not want to play it. Disc error popped up. Playback feature may not be available on this disc. Well, I was afraid of something like this happening. In the grand scheme of things, one disc is not that big a deal. I'd be out maybe 2 hours of media in a growing collection that by my roughest estimate spanned something over a year. But I recorded these shows for something. I wanted to keep them. They're important to me. On some level, they still are. They represent an imprint, part of my personal history. Sure, they can't all be gems. There's a lot of filler and placeholder episodes, even in series I treasure. At the time, I might have just been recording them so as to write about them, since I did write a TV column for 7 years. But even just if only for the sense of completion, I'd like to be able to see all my discs, all the media I recorded and hoarded and archived. If it was on my screen and I pressed record, that meant on some level I wanted to keep it. And in that I've kept it for this long, I have media in my collection that dates to the late 80s. I guess I'll come out and say it. I'd like to be able to preserve it. So the disc error was unnerving. My first thought was that the disc had been damaged. Certainly that's always a potential. This collection of homemade DVDs has grown over the course of a decade now and has been stored and moved and knocked around a few times despite my best efforts to preserve it. And I'm still only on my second case of DVDs here. I wiped it down and loaded it again, and no dice. It was, in fact, a DVD plus R disc, so if it was not finalized, Sonja was definitely going to have issues with it. I brought it down to Tabitha downstairs, and as it happened, she was cool with it. The disc loaded right up and played just fine. However, she did not know how to finalize the disc, hence my adventure for this installment. Tabitha could play the disc, but could not finalize it, and as it happens, none of my other players could even play the disc, so I brought Sonja downstairs and got her hooked up to Tabitha so as to record a new version of it. 2 hours later, I had a fresh, finalized copy of disc 284 that I could play anywhere. So what was on this disc? As it happens, the disc featured the continuation of the pilot episode for Private Practice, the series premiere of the Peter Krause vehicle Dirty Sexy Money, and the series premiere of Moonlight starring Alex O'Loughlin. Nothing all that likely to set the world on fire, but again, in some instance where it might be necessary to extract some valuable media from a recalcitrant disc, it's nice to know I've got another arrow in that quiver. Also from the classic collection, this fall marked NBC's attempt to reboot The Bionic Woman. I also caught the 4th season premiere of Boston Legal, which featured John Larroquette as a partner from the New York office who showed up to impose some dignity and order in the law firm of Crane, Poole, and Schmidt. Top target was Clarence, or more specifically Clarice, who was played by Gary Anthony Williams. Floating his boss's misgivings, Clarice teamed up with Doris, played by Yvette Nicole Brown, to perform Big Blonde and Beautiful from Hairspray, which I thought was so cool, having just seen it live in the park last weekend. Finally, this group of shows also featured the series premiere of Chuck, Heroes, Life, and Journeyman.
Current collection.
Heading into my current collection, I found a few interesting scraps. I'd recorded Jimmy Fallon's Week in Words, where his clever production team morphed and auto-tuned clips of news reporting into musical art. That one tagged the La La Land Moonlight mishap, a new hypermobile robot, and the president's speech. I caught Alison Krauss's performance of I Never Cared for You on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, as well as Joe Scarborough's cover of Elvis Costello's What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding on that show. I also caught a segment of KX News about the bears at the Dakota Zoo. So cute. I see I've archived a few movies, including the Rat Pack's Robin and the Seven Hoods and Some Like It Hot from Turner Classic Movies, as well as Victor Victoria, West Side Story, and a Laurel and Hardy short called The Music Box. I saved Death Becomes Her and The Book Thief from the Sundance Channel, Shutter Island from Sci-Fi, Hannibal and The Watchmen from IFC, The Help from TBS, and Precious from the CW. I also cataloged some very cool episodes of Doctor Who featuring Vincent van Gogh, the Neil Gaiman episode of The Doctor's Wife, and Missy's first appearance in Deep Breath. I made some progress well into the 6th season of Supernatural, tracked down a couple more episodes of Taboo and Legion, and archived the pilot episode of Feud, Betty and Joan, which I let run for a while. Very well put together installment, a good introduction to the concept, and enjoyable storytelling generally. Susan Sarandon and Jessica Lange both turned in towering performances and served their subjects well. I also archived the final installment of Emerald City, which I do not believe was given enough of a chance. That said, Oz and Dorothy have been parsed and explored and reimagined from so many different directions that the steampunk version was simply the latest. I enjoyed Jolie Richardson in the series and the themes that they were tracing, biology versus destiny, science versus magic, witches versus wizards. In the end, it could have been just too much fantasy for network audiences, and too much of an investment for audiences in the rounding error for the key 18 to 49 demographic, according to the Futon Critic. Beyond that, thank you so much for tuning in. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at videofuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes of this podcast at iTunes and videofuzzy.libsyn.com. Feedback is always appreciated, and you can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my Video Fuzzy page on Facebook. For Video Fuzzy, I'm Terry J. Amon. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.